Welcome to episode 13 of the Head in the Clouds video series. I am Ken Hartman, a SANS certified instructor and content creator for the SANS Cloud Security Curriculum. Today's episode is titled Docker Jumpstart. Many folks that work in information security know that they should learn about Docker and keep meaning to do so, but for some reason have not yet entered the foray. If you fall into that category, we'll jump right in and follow along with this episode. For this episode, we will assume that you have a fresh Ubuntu 20.01 virtual machine running and have a SSH connection to it. And for your reference, this section follows along the steps that are outlined in the Docker installation documentation. First, we'll set up the repo by running the following commands. Then add Docker's official GPG key. By the way, you may find it easier to copy and paste the commands from the headintheclouds.site show notes website. Next, we set up Docker Engine Community Edition. Okay, let's play with Docker. First, let's verify that there are no Docker images on the local system. Note that if we try to run the Docker images command without sudo, we get a permissions error. We can fix that by adding the Ubuntu user to the Docker group. Now we can run any Docker command without sudo in front. So let's run the Docker version of the classic Hello World test. Pretty cool. You might want to pause here and take a moment to read about all the different behind-the-scenes magic that Docker performed on your behalf. But now, let's go ahead and rerun the Docker images command to see what has changed. Okay, great. We don't need that image around anymore, so what command do we need to delete the image? Run docker help to see a list of all the possible Docker commands. It looks like it would be docker RMI. So let's try it. Well, that didn't work. We can't remove the image while there's a container referencing it. Well, let's see what containers are running using docker ps. That didn't show us what we wanted to see. Let's rerun it with the all option. The all option shows us all containers, not just the running containers. For more information, reference the Docker documentation. Now that we know the container ID that is referencing our Hello World image, we can delete it using the docker rm command as shown. And now, if we rerun the docker ps all command, we see that the container is gone. Once the container is zapped, we can delete the image. And just to confirm that the image actually is deleted, great. Now let's pull down a different image. Let's pull down the official Ubuntu container image from Docker Hub. We can see that it was downloaded. Next, let's run the container in an interactive mode so that we can execute various commands from the bash shell within the container. To do that, we need two options. -I is interactive. Keep standard in open, even if it's not attached. And -t, allocate a sudo tty. And while we're at it, we will assign a name to the container with the name option. So our command becomes, and when we run it, we see our prompt change. Now we can run some commands that are executed inside the container. The exit command kills the container, executing in the foreground, and returns us to our original prompt. List the container. We can run the container again by using the docker start command, remembering to pass in the interactive option. If we use the rm option with the run command, it cleans up the container when the command passed into the container exits. In this case, the ls command runs in the container and then the container exits. Note that we named the container test2, but when we ran docker ps all, we did not see it listed because of the rm switch. The most common use case for Docker is to run web services. So let's create a simple web server to illustrate some important concepts. First, let's create a basic web page called index.html in a directory called html. With that done, we need to create a Docker file. Images are typically built from a base image, adding and removing stuff as needed. Our base image will be the Nginx image since it already has the web server installed. Then we will copy our HTML folder onto the image, stomping on the existing user share Nginx HTML folder. That creates our Docker file, thanks to the magic of file redirection. Double checking our Docker file. Looks good. Now, let's build a custom image based on our Docker file. Note that the period indicates the current directory. Now, when we run Docker images, we see 2 new images along with the Ubuntu image from before. The HITC image is the image that we just created, and it is derived from the Nginx image referenced in the Docker file. Because it was referenced, Docker pulled down a local copy from Docker Hub. Okay, let's spin up a container from this image and see if we can hit it with curl. Note that the -d option ran the container in the background. -d stands for detached mode. And that the -p option maps port 8080 on the host to port 80 on the container. And we can run docker ps and observe that the container is still running in the background. If we want to see what processes are running inside the container, we can use docker top container, like so. If we stop the container, we will no longer be able to connect to port 8080. Well, there you go. We installed Docker Community Edition, learned some basic Docker commands, and launched a very basic website. Hopefully, this video has removed any reasons you may have had to procrastinate and inspired you to jump in and play. Of course, there's much more to learn, and many additional tutorials are just an internet search away. In our next episode, we will build on this foundation and create a Docker image that will have utility for members of this audience as we continue to explore the cloud. If you have thoughts or comments on today's episode, feel free to chime in on the comments for this YouTube video. If you appreciate this video and want to see more like it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Stay tuned for another installment of Head in the Clouds as announcements of new episodes are made on the SANS Cloud Security Twitter feed. Meanwhile, be sure to check out the other great videos on the SANS Cloud Security YouTube channel. Take care.